I'm in Endcliffe Park in Sheffield once again today. Not been here for a little while. There's several events happening today, supposedly. Today's quite a busy day for protests. There's supposedly one in London that's intended to be a big one, but a lot of people in London, a lot of people can't easily get to London. So I think people try to organise more local ones if they can. I know there's one in Manchester, which I expect will be quite big. I will be going to the Sheffield Peace Gardens one later. Again, whether many will turn up, I don't know, because as usually happens, a lot of the Sheffield regulars will probably go to either London or Manchester, so I'm not expecting much, but I gather people have tried to organise something for Sheffield. The reason I'm in Endcliffe Park today is for what's known as a stand in the park. I didn't know anything about this until the other day, but I gather it started in Australia. It was supposedly something to do with the anti-lockdown movement, possibly a way of having a peaceful kind of protest, but to sort of either a memorial or a solidarity thing for people who have been victims of the lockdown, so suicides, job losses, education losses, mental health, things like that. I know here in South Yorkshire, it was announced recently that suicides are up in Rotherham by 5%. I don't know what it's like elsewhere in South Yorkshire, but 5% in Rotherham, it's hardly surprising. I was speaking to someone in the not too distant past who runs an Alcoholics Anonymous group here in Sheffield, and he was saying there's been an increase in the number of people who have wanted help with alcoholism, which is hardly surprising. But he said that despite the increase in demand for help with alcoholism, he actually sat around for about 2 hours with no one turning up. Anyway, as we can see, Endcliffe Park is fairly busy. There's lots of people out walking and running, and there's a few dogs around. There's people at the outdoor gym. There's a few people for the stand in the park thing who I've spoke to already. I might go and see if any will speak on camera later on. Well, the park's getting a bit busier now that now it's getting later on in the morning and the sun's coming out and it's warming up. Right, well, that Endcliffe Park turnout was quite interesting. We've had about 15 people throughout the morning. No one wanted to speak on video, unfortunately, but we had two people who have a scientific background. One does medical physics, medical devices, worked at university. No, not university, works at hospitals in Sheffield. We've had one person who, another person who works at the Sheffield hospital. I think she did, can't remember now, was it endoscopy? Had a couple of Indians. One of the Indians was also had a scientific background. He does statistical modelling. Was keen to point out that he's not related to the statistical models for the that have been used for the coronavirus. In addition to the Indian, we had an Eastern European who commented on the propaganda that's been going around. Anyway, Endcliffe Park's quite busy now. I'm just off into the city centre to see if there's anything happening there. Right, I'm in Sheffield city centre once again. Might be an interesting day. We've just been up in Endcliffe Park this morning. Spoke to several people there who were supporters of the anti-lockdown movement. Got the usual protest in Sheffield at 2 o'clock, midday. Again, I think a lot of people will have gone to the London or the Manchester one, so I don't know whether there'll be much turnout. I gather some people have been planning some things, but I don't actually know what yet. It is also today, the 20th of March, the United Nations Anti-Racism Day. Now, I've heard on a poster that there's going to be some socially distanced events on in the city centre. Don't quite know what that means, but I've seen some people already with posters, so I expect there'll be something happening. And today I'm also testing out this new microphone. I've got a Rode Lavalier Go. That's clipped onto my jacket, so this is the first time I've used it properly. So hopefully you can hear me nice and clearly. And if I manage to interview anyone, you can hear them from the shotgun microphone, and you'll hear what I say through the clip-on microphone. There's news recently that John Lewis might be closing some stores. They said they've not ruled out the closure of the Sheffield branch yet. Although apparently if they do close, they'll have to pay back Sheffield City Council a heck of a lot of money that they've borrowed. So it looks like this is the stand up to racism, or maybe Black Lives Matter, maybe Trade Union Congress, who knows. I see the police are here. We might see if I can get a word with the police at some point. This will be an interesting day for police interactions because they tend to be very tolerant of the anti-racism and Black Lives things, but they're not very tolerant of anti-lockdown protests. So it'll be very interesting to see what police attitudes are to things today. Oh, well, there are supposed to be some things on. There's an anti-racism thing and an anti-lockdown.
Yeah, we found out anti-black lives don't matter, and then we figured out that all of them are white and not one's black. So I thought that were a piss.
I noticed him, I'm taking him in John Lewis's.
Yeah, well, there's a big anti-lockdown thing in London and in Manchester. I think a lot of the people who regularly turn up in Sheffield will probably go to one of those, so I don't know
I was
what's
told yesterday, because I went Labour Party, that Mr Corbyn would be in London, Mr Corbyn, not Mr Corbyn. So.
Well, while I've got my video camera, how have you two found the lockdown?
Happily.
Have you enjoyed it?
I have had. It's been, because I've got autism,
Oh, right.
and I don't like lots of crowds,
Yeah.
I find it the most peaceful place on this planet at the moment.
Oh, that's interesting to hear, actually. I've got Asperger's syndrome.
Sitting there.
Oh, right. I, to an extent, I enjoy the quietness. On the other hand, if there's no one around, it means there's no one keeping the businesses open, and just when you need your shopping, the businesses will be shut because there are no customers.
Now, they've always got to turn around food. That's the be all and end all of it. You always say if the price of milk and bread goes up, that means everything, the price is going up.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you've got to notice.
Yeah.
I'm glad to use it. So I met someone else with Asperger's.
Right, yeah. There's a few of us around.
I know there is.
Yeah.
We get in trouble a lot, some of us.
Yeah.
We don't know right from wrong.
Yeah. Well, do you think the lockdown will end? It's been announced for June, I think. Do you think that'll be the end of it?
April 12th, I've been told.
There's something happening in April 12th, they're opening beer gardens, aren't they, and that, but not in
Oh,
the pubs,
yeah. I think they announced June for the end of the whole thing.
All right. That's when it's all going to hit the
until-
fan. That's what the HMO has already said about summer. There'll be more deaths than there was in the winter last year.
Yeah.
And I've read that on
Until
news.
one
politics.
child comes to go to school and he's sent home because he's got, what is he, LPD, whatever.
They already been sent home after 2 days.
And then out in June, and then everything will go back to go again, won't it?
Yeah.
Won't happen.
Yeah.
I look on the bright side, look, I always have done.
Yeah. I think you've got to try and look on the bright side at the moment, haven't you?
She's an optimist, this one.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm a pragmatist.
Yeah.
I just think everything's going to taste sour.
I wouldn't be surprised if it does.
I know it is. But I've already read on politics problem like there'll be more deaths in the summer than there will be in the winter.
Yeah.
But on programmes they show you on the television, they're telling you that it's going to be all right. But it's not.
Yeah.
No.
So this one's about Palestinian Lives Matter. And this is about someone who's autistic. That's interesting given that I've just had a chat about autism with someone up the road. Unity is strength. The University of Sheffield, education a right, not a commodity. That's another interesting topic I was just chatting with the people up there about. They were questioning the need for tuition fees. We've got Rotherham and Sheffield stand up to racism. Migrants make our NHS. That's actually very true given the number of foreigners I've spoken to. So there's a lot of very good points being raised here, I think. Be interesting to see if they've got any speeches later on. We've also got Barnsley stand up to racism, I think that says there, and defend the right to protest. That's an interesting one because they are trying to push through Parliament some laws that will prevent people from protesting, at least in the conventional sense. I think protests would still be allowed under the new laws, but they're trying to deal with things like noise, which ultimately will just put a block on the protests like the coronavirus regulations have. So moving a little bit further down Pinston Street, we've got the anti-lockdown protest and some extra banners. A few more banners than usual. We've got the COVID-1984, which is very true. Lockdown has led to many unnecessary deaths, cancelled operations, suicides and experimental vaccines. Well, that seems to be very true, but the thing is hardly anyone's actually taking it seriously.
backing old normal. I take it you don't like the new normal.
Oh no, definitely not, definitely not. I saw a media person, and I believe it was the BBC, speak about how bad things could get, and that was before Boris Johnson had changed course. He was heading towards the Swedish model, and then he changed course. So I looked into it, it's a pile of rot. But yeah, we need to get back to some kind of normality.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's have a look at the other side.
Yeah, sure.
We own our bodies, we choose. Supporting freedom.
So this is the memorial for victims of lockdown. Only 2 candles so far. I think now is an interesting time for protests. Just recently, the other day in fact, there was a lady down in London who got killed, allegedly killed by a policeman. He's been charged, not been prosecuted yet. But that's led to a lot of protests about women's safety. Now, my view of that is that feeling safe out in public is a matter for everyone. It's not just a women's issue. But there's been a lot of protests. And down in London, Commissioner Dick has been living up to her name again. She's basically had the police use violence against the women in these protests. So they're protesting against someone who got killed by a policeman, and now the police are assaulting people who are protesting. And of course this is around the time that they're trying to introduce legislation to restrict protests. Now there's been restrictions to protests as a result of the coronavirus regulations. I think people will just get used to that. A lot of protests have actually been cancelled or severely cut back because they're not allowed under the coronavirus regulations, and I think people will just get used to that. They'll become complacent, and they'll be, they'll just say, oh, we shouldn't have protests, and of course that's not what you have in a democracy. In a democracy you should be able to protest, you should be able to go out, even if you're not protesting to the government, you can at least go out and try and pass your message on to other people, as we've seen today already in the city centre. And I've not even been here very long, and already I've seen umpteen different banners and leaflets, and I've already spoke to a few people. Now, I was very critical of last year's Black Lives Matter protests. Last year there were some protests all over the country, and all over the world in fact, for Black Lives Matter. They started because of a bloke called George Floyd who got killed by policemen in America. And I was critical of those because I thought they're just basically dragging across an American problem, and the police were very lenient of those protests here because the police here don't want to be seen as racists. And of course there's a lot of political correctness in the police. And I, like other people, were thinking, well, do all lives matter, especially during the lockdown. Anyway, a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests, they were very anti-police, anti-history. They're trying to sort of take down history by knocking down statues. It's basically something I would not support at all. But I thought, well, out of all those people, how many of them are actually anti-police and anti-capitalism and anti-history? How many of them actually go to these events just because they suffer from racism in everyday life? Maybe if they might not believe in all this anti-police stuff and anti-history stuff, but they might just go out and get abuse on the streets every day. They might have lost the job because of a racist employer. It's hard to know, and I thought maybe I ought to take a more objective look at these things and see what people actually do turn up at these things for, find out what the problem is, rather than just drawing conclusions. And of course those sorts of conclusions is exactly what's happened. Those conclusions that I've made about the Black Lives Matter is exactly what's happened with our anti-lockdown protests, which I've been very supportive of. If you go to a coronavirus protest, if it gets reported in the paper, a lot don't, but if it gets reported in the paper, they say just get like a bunch of conspiracy theorists defy lockdown rules. They don't actually consider what people actually go there for. And when you actually get talking to the people at these protests, even if they're conspiracy theorists, you get a lot who who have very genuine problems, especially with regards to their own health and with loss of education, loss of jobs. A lot of people have very genuine concerns about it, and that's why they have the protests, and that's why it's important that protests can carry on in the way that they always have done. Is that a piece of chalk I see for social distancing? Out of curiosity, I notice you've got a mask there. Do you have any issue with masks?
I do.
Yeah.
I have issues with queuing as well. Tried to get me injected twice.
Yeah.
But I look at the size of the queues and think, nah, not winning there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah. I know some people with autism, they absolutely despise masks, as I do, and some people don't seem to mind them at all. It's quite interesting to know people's opinions.
Yeah, I keep it on because I have to, don't I?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like wearing them myself.
Yeah.
Me, I'd have gone and kissed everyone in March and thought, you could have come out on top, you could have come out on top. Gene pool would be a lot better.
Yeah. So will you be having the new vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine?
Oh no! In fact, we're outside. I'm from Sheffield, so I was outside yesterday, sort of raising my voice, not shouting, but I was raising my voice, trying to sort of influence people to walk away from the
Oh, that's
test
at one of the vaccine centres?
Sorry?
Oh, one of the vaccine centres?
Outside in Sheffield, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what was the response like?
They just ignored you. When I went by later on, I went back to see whether there were people still going, and there wasn't. But I did get a funny look from one of the women who'd seen me earlier, sort of across the road and that. It was just that I was passing and saw it all these people going. I've never seen that before. So I think perhaps a few of us ought to go down next this coming week and make a sort of a little bit of a appearance and
that'd be interesting. I'd be interested to see how that goes actually.
I think it's needed. It's needed.
That's the 1 o'clock time signal, and I can see it pegged out my audio meter.
Right, we're going to take the knee. Some people get their social distance, please. We're going to take the knee for 8 minutes and 42 seconds. If you can't kneel, then just bend or something like that. And raise your hand in the air. And then afterwards, there's a count change to the front. And then in the front,
Well, I will admit I'm pleased to see that the police are not pandering to politics today. I'd actually quite like to interview some of those people actually, but they look very intimidating with the masks and the social distancing, so I might not unless someone wants to come and help.
Can you make sure you give us your flags back? We want to decorate the taxis. The GMB taxi drivers are organising the next part of the protest. So if you can bring the flags back, that would be great. But also against racism. That's what we want, a world without racism. So then we don't want the criminal justice bill that's being put through either. So put hashtag kill the bill and hashtag take the knee. So if you put all them out, they will get tweeted out across the world to all the countries that are participating in the UN Anti-Racism Day today. So thank you very much, everybody. As everybody disperses, can you make sure you keep your social distance, please?
It's good to see that they're making the advertising a bit less sensationalist than it was.
Film someone, it might be polite to ask them first. People aren't just public consumption.
Alright.
Yeah, so have a bit of courtesy, would you? Perhaps ask if you film someone.
Well, if you're in public, there's not much you can do about it, really.
And you're filming now, aren't you? You just can't stop yourself, you people, can you? Just keep going, archive your existence and have no bloody manners. Please just bugger off.
Well, Wetherspoons are planning to open on the 12th of April. The big question is, will they actually open, or will they be forced into postponing it? Well, we've had an interesting turnout here in Sheffield today. We've had a socially distanced anti-racism protest. We've had an anti-lockdown protest, which has had a surprisingly good turnout. Plenty of people who didn't want to speak on video, and one miserable sod.